Wilson Alexander of theadvocate.com joins Glenn Guilbeau and Todd Horne to discuss the latest on Beth Rex, Brian Kelly's now former football chief of staff who resigned for unknown reasons, effective on October 2nd, 2024, during LSU's first bye week. Wilson, Glenn, and Todd talk about what went wrong for the Tigers against Texas A&M and where the Tigers may go from here. I'm your host, Jake McMains, and all that and more right after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Mike Munnerlin, and we're here to smash the capital city's trash.
Smash My Trash is a revolutionary compactor for large dumpsters, sometimes reducing the volume of waste by up to 70%. This means fewer hauls per month and big savings for your business. Fewer hauls and compacted waste will also result in a positive impact on our community and our environment by taking up less space in our local landfill sites. Schedule your company's free demo today. Call 225-497-0101.
Y'all ready? Yeah. Let's go. Come on.
Tiger Rag Radio is on the air.
Let's crank this thing up.
We're statewide, breaking down the latest happenings with LSU athletics.
This is us.
Hear from the coaches.
Put together a defense that puts us in a position to win the SEC.
The players.
Having fun and we working, baby. That's it, man.
The recruits.
Show some passion and some heart.
And those who cover the Fighting Tigers of LSU and the SEC.
All those things are going to be there, which are important.
It's 2 hours of nonstop LSU talk.
What a privilege. I mean, you get to represent LSU.
Tiger Rag Radio is brought to you by Cummins. Cummins creates power solutions that the world depends on. Helm Paint and Decorating. The paint experts of Louisiana. Louisiana Beef Industry Council. Max Home. And the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Get ready to talk Tigers with producer Jackson Blackman and our hosts, Todd Horne and Jeff Palermo.
Three great players that are better people than they are players.
This is Tiger Rag Radio.
Welcome back to Tiger Rag Radio. This is Glenn Guilbeau, editor of Tiger Rag Magazine, with executive editor Todd Horne. We've been talking a little LSU baseball. We're going to swing back to LSU football with Wilson Alexander from the Baton Rouge, New Orleans Advocate through the Max Home Hotline. Over 50,000 Max Happy Home owners and counting. Todd Horne. Wilson, how are you tonight?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Great. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Wilson.
Thanks for having me.
Quick question. Of course, we want to talk football. We want to talk Texas A&M. We want to talk Alabama. We want to talk about the Reed option and the adjustments LSU did.
The Marcel Reed option.
Yeah, actually. We want to talk about all that with you. But before we do that, you broke a story yesterday, I believe it was, maybe the day before. I'm losing track of time already. That Brian Kelly's longtime football chief of staff, Beth Rex, been with him at Notre Dame all the way back to when he was at Cincinnati, resigned effective October 2nd, I believe. And we don't know the reason. I've gotten several emails, questions asking what's going on. People are suspicious. Is there anything you can tell us other than what you wrote in the story?
No, I don't have anything else at this time. But as you said, yeah, Beth Rex, who has been with Brian Kelly since his days at Cincinnati. I mean, she was one of the first people who he brought here to LSU. They've been together for more than a decade, and she's really, and the title might be different from here or there, but really it's been as his sort of chief of staff and had a really key role in sort of the off-field operation of things under Brian Kelly, now at multiple schools. She resigned, as you said, October 2nd during LSU's first bye week, and unfortunately don't have the sort of reasoning behind that and all that at this time. That's kind of the extent of what we know at the moment. But she is no longer with the program, and that's a pretty significant change to the off-field staff because of how long she's been with Brian Kelly.
Be interesting to see if who her replacement will be, what role they will have, and what type of impact it has on the operation, as you were just discussing. I did get I mentioned I got several emails and questions about that. One of them wanted to know if she was the coach of the running game for LSU. What is the problem with the running game? I mean, it looked pretty good against Arkansas, really good, with Caden Durham having 101 yards, and then Texas A&M has been strong against the running game, but LSU just simply couldn't get it going. Any explanations?
Well, Brian Kelly talked tonight about sort of a few things. One, he gave some credit to A&M, as you sort of mentioned, they do have a strong defensive front there. Nick Scorton, I think in particular, played a really good game. But LSU just across the board operationally in the run game was just way off and reverted. I mean, not even reverted because it hasn't been this bad all season. There's been times when we've questioned LSU's running game and had concerns about it, but this was sort of a new level when you rush for a net of 24 yards and really average, when you adjust for sacks, 1.9 yards per carry. Brian Kelly said that some of it is, losing individual matchups up front. Some of it is on Garrett Nussmeier. Sometimes there are times when maybe he needs to check out of something if there's a loaded box, or if it's post snap, a play where you've got multiple options like on an RPO or something like that, where sometimes he needs to make a different decision. Also, the running backs just have to see the holes better. But I mean, gosh, frankly, they didn't have a great game, but they also didn't have anywhere to run that I could tell. Especially looking back at the film, it was like there wasn't just anywhere to really go up front. Everything was so muddy, especially kind of, they had a little bit of success early on. Josh Williams, I think, had a 10-yard carry. Caden Durham had like a 13-yard carry, or maybe I'm getting those reversed. They both had two, some decent runs there, and then it just went away. And but obviously, I think it's everything across the board on this offense right now. The run game just is not there, is not working, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But the fact of the matter is, LSU's got to get figured out.
Trains are everywhere. You should always expect one, even on private property. Only cross tracks at designated crossings that fit your equipment. If you don't fit, don't commit. Look, listen, live.
So, Wilson, before we leave this subject, obviously you mentioned it. Kelly said it was Nussmeier partially responsible for making bad reads, pre-snap reads, post-snap reads with the RPOs, what have you. But has there been any discussion? Have you had any discussions with Coach Kelly, about the fact that when they're running the read option, there's really no threat of Garrett Nussmeier to keep it and run, so that kind of diminishes the whole point of the read option?
Yes, that has certainly come up here, especially over the past few weeks, maybe to a month even at this point, where I get it, emails from fans wondering the same thing. Why is Garrett not use his legs? And that's something that LSU has been working with him on. There was a moment at the end of the Arkansas game when Garrett kept on his own read play. There was a blitzer. He kept the ball. He picked up 5 yards, and he looked over at LSU's sideline, and he pumped his fist, and he smiled. And said later he was pumping his fist right at Brian Kelly, just because Kelly's the one who's always on him, according to Garrett, about pulling the ball when he doesn't do it and when he misses those moments. And so LSU's certainly been trying to work with him on it. But at this point in the season, it is sort of why not, switch to something else if you can, and why is that still such a big part of the offense if the quarterback is, as Garrett said last week, still trying to learn those things. Garrett, we asked him about it, and he said that for so long in his life, he's been able to rely on his arm, trust his arm. And, obviously they've practiced this stuff over the last few years. It's not like this hasn't been practiced. We watched them practice it, but it's completely different when you're going up in a game situation and you have to make those decisions. And it's not necessarily natural for him. It's not ever been something he's had to really do in a game until now. Here he is as a starter finally in his career. And so he still isn't, I think, really, grasping it fully. And yet LSU continues to run some things that build off of those concepts. And so there might need to be something here in the bye week that they tinker with or adjust.
Just think if Marcel Reed had pumped his fist at Mike Elko every time he had a 5-yard or more run on the read option Saturday. Was that kind of amazing to you, Wilson, the way they were unable to stop or adjust or try to adjust to Marcel Reed as that game went on?
Yeah, the inability to adjust was surprising because, if he catches you off guard for a drive or two when he first comes in there, that's one thing. As Greg Penn spoke to after the game and as Brian Kelly talked about here today, they had prepared all week for Connor Wegman. And I think he has a point there. You don't really prepare for the backup quarterback. Now, you probably should have spent some more time on it because he had played this season. It wasn't like he was an unknown commodity there. He had started 3 games. But they had sort of prepared the whole time for Connor Wegman. So, okay, maybe it takes you a little bit longer to adjust, but then LSU really just never could. And I think that Texas A&M, with play calls and with Reed, what he was doing, was really able to sort of use LSU's aggressiveness against them. That's something that has been the identity of this defense that they've had a lot of success with here in recent weeks. But then now if you're over pursuing on the zone read, If guys are kind of out of their lanes and trying to do too much, which has been a problem for LSU's defense over the last 2 years, often trying to do too much, then you end up with these big holes and Marcel Reed running right through you. Obviously, it didn't help either that he had a bunch of short fields, but they were able to Texas A&M and Reed in particular with him in the offense was really able to sort of use LSU's aggressiveness against itself.
That's a very good point. Let me ask you too, Wilson. Coach Kelly tonight spoke about the injured guard Garrett Dellinger with a high ankle sprain, and he didn't rule out the possibility that he could play a week from Saturday against Alabama. But Todd and I were talking that's usually rare to come back from a high ankle sprain that quickly. But do you think he has a chance?
I don't know at this time. I mean, Brian Kelly, like you said, his words were, "We're hoping this becomes a recovery week for him." But Kelly did a good job of really avoiding any sort of timeline of saying a little bit without saying very much. Because if it's a very mild high ankle sprain, I mean, just reading about those through Google searches and stuff, like maybe he could make it back, but it'll be tight. It depends on the severity of the high ankle sprain, because usually that's something that could keep him out potentially the rest of the regular season. I mean, if it's a severe kind of case, and we don't know if it is at this point. So we'll have to keep tabs on that, because obviously that would be a big loss for this offensive line if he's not able to play. But really, if he's able to make it back to the Alabama game right now is really unclear.
It's time to start betting on yourself. Louisiana 988 can help if you're dealing with tough emotions caused by gambling habits. You can share as much or as little as you want, and it's completely confidential. It's free, available 24/7, and most people who reach out report feeling better right in the moment. Call or text 988 anytime.
One of the players who's been injured all year for LSU, who made it back for the Texas A&M game, was, of course, wide receiver Chris Hilton from Zachary. He's really LSU's speedster and their big, deep threat, vertical threat. That didn't really materialize against Texas A&M. There was one real opportunity for it, and there seemed to be a sort of an underthrow from Nussmeier. But Hilton looked to me like he was just, playing his first game of the year and didn't have his timing down. He was jumping early. And then, of course, the broadcasters on ESPN, ABC talked about that. What were your thoughts of Hilton's performance and where he's at injury-wise right now?
I think similar to what you just said, the timing with him and Garrett Nussmeier just was not there. And that's something that that isn't surprising, really, when you think about how he's missed 2 months of the season, basically. It's an injury that happened during preseason camp, and he's been out for a long time. And that's the things that, the timing on those jump balls and hitting him downfield, like, Garrett threw that post and Chris got hit. And there was just some little things off like that where you can see his speed is something that can stretch the field. But those two over the next 2 weeks here in particular got to get on the same page and just put a ton of reps in now that Chris is healthy in order to get that timing down, because he can make a difference in this passing game deep. We saw where he would be able to if those two can just really start to work out those kinks. Because I think it was just, as you said, an issue of timing and of those two not being on the same page when Chris is, because he hasn't played. And that's a tough spot to come into when you haven't played all year, coming in on the road, 108,000, huge SEC game. That's a tough spot to be thrown into when those things like timing aren't there yet.
All right, Wilson Alexander, thanks a lot for joining us tonight on Tiger Rag Radio. We're going to be back right after this break. Got a few more minutes to go, and Todd and I are going to continue to discuss the Tigers and the SEC race as we're down in the final stretch of the season here. Be back with more Tiger Rag Radio right after this.
Get ready to make some noise this October with the East Baton Rouge Parish Library. Join us for the 11th Annual Baton Rouge Maker Fair on October 19th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., where creativity and music come together. From live performances to hands-on workshops, there's fun with a beat for everyone. Visit batonrouge.makerfair.com for details. Brought to you by your East Baton Rouge Parish Library, where creativity never stops.
All right, that'll be it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Wilson, Todd, and Glenn for the discussion. We'll be back later this week, but until then, stay tuned to TigerRag.com for all your latest LSU sports news.